Well, welcome everyone. It's great to have a big crowd on hand tonight. I love sharing the power of Lightroom with people, and it's good to have you on board. So my name's Loren Fisher. For those who don't know, I've been a professional photographer for 40 years. This is part of my 40-year big anniversary celebration. You can tell by all the bands in the background and all the hoopla. You know, I'm in a big stadium. Okay, I'm not. I'm in my basement, but I've been going at this for a long time, and started using Photoshop extensively in the mid '90s, and would probably be classified as an expert in Photoshop. Then when Lightroom came around, I started playing with it, and at first it didn't do much for me. It was created as a database program, mainly to organize your photos. So I already had an organizational plan in works, and it was working quite well, so I didn't need Lightroom to do that for me. So I kept my eye on it, and 2 or 3 versions later, they started making the develop module become much better, and then it started getting interesting. So then a few years ago, I'm going to mute here. A few years ago, it became extremely powerful in the develop side to make tonal changes to your photos. And that's when I really perked up and said, wait a minute, what's going on here? So now I'm at the point where all of my photos are managed in Lightroom. And then about 15% I take over to Photoshop to do some things that Lightroom can't do, which is mainly removing large objects or masking things off, or things like that. So all photos need to have, all digital photos need to have some toning work done to them. So every photo needs to be touched now. It's just the way that digital works, especially if you're shooting in the RAW format. Everything needs to have something done to it to bring out what you saw, because what the camera sees is not the same. All that information is captured, but you need to bring it out. So, you know, interestingly, when I started doing workshops really heavily about 8 or 9 years ago, kind of came up. I was thinking about and talking with a couple of professional friends about why do some photographers make such better pictures than others, and came up with kind of a 3-step process. One is you have to know your equipment, and you have to know light and composition, and then it was you have to be able to expose your soul and get your soul into your pictures. Well, now I've added you have to have post-processing. So now there's 4 things that make for a good photographer, and post-processing has become an equal part of all the rest. So now if you just go out and make pictures and you don't do any post-processing, you're not getting the most out of your photos. And fortunately, Lightroom has become so powerful. They often introduce things to Lightroom. You know, Adobe owns both Lightroom and Photoshop, their sister programs. They will introduce things in Lightroom before they do to Photoshop, which tells you what they think of Lightroom also. So Lightroom has become not only a great place to organize your photos, but also a great place to do your toning, your development, and almost everything you need to do to a photo. So I'm going to switch over so you can stop looking at my face and start looking at my screen. So let me click the right things here so we get that. Which screen is it? Okay, and I'll remind folks, if you're just coming on, to please mute your microphones until you have a question to ask, and then you can unmute and we'll go from there. Let's do it this way. Okay, so now you should be seeing my Lightroom screen. If you're not, we're in trouble. No. So I'm going to do just an overview of what Lightroom does and some of the how it does and a little bit of the why. You're not going to sit here for the next couple hours and be able to knock out finished polished images if you haven't touched Lightroom before, but hopefully it'll give you some a good feel for what it does and the power of it. So Lightroom, let me just change one thing here so I can see better. Okay. Lightroom, like I said, was developed as a database program so that you can find your photos and organize and keep them in a great order. So they kind of set it up like a file system. I like to think of it as the old card catalog in the library. So your photos are stored in a catalog, is what they call it. And then there's essentially the reference cards in the file drawers, and then your actual photos are stored elsewhere. So one of the amazing things of Lightroom is that it does not touch your original photos. It doesn't manipulate them. It doesn't change them. It doesn't do anything to your originals. It creates what they call a preview image, which is what you see when you look at a photo. And then it creates what they call a sidecar, which is just a little text file that Lightroom uses when you either export or you print. So within the Lightroom catalog, when you're seeing a grid of photos, you're not seeing your original photos, you're seeing preview representations of those photos, and the changes you are making to your photos are not changing your originals. So if you make a change within Lightroom and then you open your original photo in another program and look at it, you won't see those changes. And so that's called non-destructive non-destructive editing process. The great part of that is you can't screw anything up. You know, if you mess it up in Lightroom, you can just reset it. And it also gives you the ability to have a full history of everything you've ever done to that photo. And I'll show you that a little bit later where that is. But the concept is a little tough to grasp because a lot of people say, well, I'm really worried where my originals are stored. And it doesn't really matter where they are as long as Lightroom knows where they are. If you move them outside of Lightroom, so if you have them in one folder, you drag them to another folder and you didn't tell Lightroom or you didn't do it within Lightroom, Lightroom is going to say, hey, I don't know where those went. Just like in the old library card catalog, if somebody didn't file the book back where it belonged on the bookshelf, if they put it in the wrong row, you pull out the card, you go look for the book, it's not there. Well, so Lightroom, instead of making you walk over and find the photo or the book, it finds it for you quickly and amazingly fast. So Lightroom is, like I say, built on a catalog. And if you can see my catalog, does that zoom work? It doesn't. Drat. Okay. So my catalog, I have 58,144 photos in it. You can have an unlimited number of photos in your catalog. I don't know if it starts slowing down over 1 million. I'll never find out, but it's you know, that's a lot of photos. So you can put a lot of photos in there and it will handle it quite well. When I first started with Lightroom, I would have a different catalog for different subjects if I had a major event. So I have a dog photography studio. I'm the semi-official photographer for a huge bicycle race here in Somerville, New Jersey. I did weddings. I don't do that anymore. So I had a different catalog for all those things, and then my fine artwork and whatever else I was doing. And then I realized, wait a minute, that might not be too smart, because now I have to remember which catalog it's in. So if I took a picture of a dog at the bike race, is it going to be in the bike race catalog, or is it going to be in the dog catalog? And I wasn't using the power of Lightroom. So now, and I recommend this for everyone, is have only one catalog. It's okay to have multiple catalogs, but you have to remember where those photos are, which is taking away some of the power of the database properties of Lightroom. So just create one catalog, and then you import photos into Lightroom. Now, Lightroom is very intuitive, but they have two words that I think are completely confusing and wrong. I haven't been able to think of anything better to suggest to them, but import is one of them, because you're not importing your photos, you're importing the preview. So when you hit the import button and you bring photos into Lightroom, you're not really bringing your photos, because remember, you're not working on the originals, you're working on a preview version of that. So import is a little bit of a misnomer, but I can't come up with anything. Obviously, they couldn't either. And the same thing on the export side. You don't really export photos out of Lightroom. When you export, you tell it, go find the original photo and add all the things that you want to add to it, and then make a copy of it. So when you're working with Lightroom, don't get hung up on the import. Don't get hung up on where your photos are. As long as Lightroom knows where they are, you're okay. Now, if you move them and Lightroom loses track of them, Lightroom's going to yell at you. It's going to call you dirty names. No, not dirty names. Just going to give you a warning, an asterisk up in the corner of your photo, and which means, if you move your cursor over that, it'll say photo is missing, doesn't know where it went. Do you want me to find it? So if you click on that, it'll help you find it. And if you moved a whole folder full of photos, once you find one, it will assume all the rest of them you want to have back in there, so it'll pull them all back into. So if you do mess up and move some photos around, it's pretty easy to get them back, because they knew that people would do that.
Loren, question?
Yes. Go ahead.
So I was working in Lightroom and I ran out of space, and what I did was set the catalog on my external drive, because I ran out of space on my laptop drive. And when I did that, it doesn't show, it wouldn't show anymore my all my photographs.
So it wouldn't show them, or you couldn't edit them? Did they show up as thumbnails?
No, I mean, it wouldn't show my hard drive with the photographs.
That's something we could take a look at. I don't know. I mean, it'd probably take us 15 minutes to go through that and figure that out. So I don't want to try to do that with everyone listening. So
maybe next time we meet, I'll bring my laptop.
That would be good. Yes.
Thank you.
You bet. So once you have photos in Lightroom, they become extremely easy to find. So if I click on all photographs, we'll see all the photographs I've ever shot digitally. And if I want to find, say, a barn photo, I can just type in barn, do a Command F for barn, and up pops all the barn pictures I have, because I'm doing keywording. So when I import my photos, or after I import my photos, I add keywords. So over here on the right side, you can see I add keywords and do them as a description. I use both like barn, and then town and location and state and all that. So anything that I hope I would ever need to try to find the picture, I put it in as a keyword. That way I can find photos really quick.
Loren, excuse me.
Yes.
I have a question. I have already imported several hundred pictures into Lightroom, and none of them are in a catalog or a collection. Once I do that, is Lightroom going to know where they are, like he was speaking earlier? Is there going to be any confusion with that, with me putting them in catalogs now?
Well, so if it's in a Lightroom, so let's get our terminology, make sure we're
okay.
So the catalog is the overall, everything you're seeing is the catalog.
So they're already in a catalog.
So they're in a catalog. If you can see them in Lightroom, you have a catalog. you'll need to go through and add keywords to each one of them, and you can group them too. So if you have like this, if I have 3 pictures of the moon over a tree, I can add that all the same keywords to all of those at once. So you don't have to do them individually if you have things that are grouped.
Okay.
We'll talk about collections here in a minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
But just starting out, you know, everything needs to have keywords, and you can do that when you import, or you can do it later. It doesn't matter when. So my workflow is I import photos, and then the first thing I do is keyword the group of photos. So if we're seeing here photos from Iceland, you know, as soon as I import them, I put in Iceland and you know, whatever travel, workshop, whatever keywords I need for the whole group. And then I go in and individually keyword, you know, the name of the church and the name of the mountain and the waterfalls and the lighthouse, and that way, if I want to find that church photo, I can just click on it or the waterfalls and just do a search on the name of the waterfalls, and up comes all my photos of that waterfall.
Okay,
So,
I just have one more quick question, maybe a
sure.
dumb question, but how do you highlight several pictures at one time?
Okay, so as always, there's multiple ways, but the easiest is to click on the first one. And if there's in a series, hold down your shift key and click on the last one, and it'll select all of them. If it's not in a series, if you click on the first one, on the Mac, hold down the command key, and Windows, hold down control, and then you can individually select each one by holding down the command or control key. So as you can see there, I've selected several photos.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I have a person that I'm mentoring who had about 20,000 photos in her catalog with 0 keywords and no way to find any of them. And so you know, one of her big problems was I have all these photos, but I can't ever find anything. I have to scroll through. And if you're scrolling through 20,000 photos to find one, you're wasting a lot of time. So I told her, to her dismay, that she needed to add keywords to all those photos, which she saw the power of that. And so she just, with her laptop on her, you know, just every night while watching TV for an hour or two, instead of just being, you know, watching TV and being dumb, she just punched keywords in, and within 3 weeks she had them all done. And now it's a piece of cake to find anything. So it took her quite a few hours to do it, but you know, if you do it as you go, it is so much easier than having to go back. So like I say, every time I import, first thing I do is go in and keyword everything. The second thing I do is delete all my bad photos, and I shoot a lot of them because I shoot a lot. So so I go right through and I import everything I shoot. I never delete in the camera. Bad things can happen. The number one bad thing is the button to delete one photo is right beside the button to delete them all. Why do I know that? And then the other bad thing is sometimes your card will get corrupted by deleting within the camera. Doesn't happen often, but it happens, and cards get corrupted and you lose everything. So I just import everything, just let them all come flying into Lightroom. If I have a big shoot and it takes 15 minutes, I load them up and, you know, come back later. But then I go through and right away delete the bad ones. That way I get them out of the way. I delete them from my disk. I get rid of them. You know, in the film days, I had file cabinets full of slides, and I rarely threw away slides because I had this feeling that if they sat in a dark file cabinet for a while in the drawer, something would grow on them and they'd get better. Never happened. And the same thing happens digitally. The longer they sit on a hard drive, they don't get any better. There are some that you can resurrect that you think you can't. I'll show you some of that happening later. But so you might want to be a little careful how you delete, but if it's out of focus, it's out of focus. You're never going to get that back. So I clean it up as quick as I can, and I still have 56,000 or 58,000 photos. So that's okay. So another great way of organizing within Lightroom is what they call collections. And you can create collections based on anything you want. It can be, what, you know, whatever you want them to be. It can be all the pictures you shot in Italy, or the best pictures you shot in Italy, or your favorites from 2017, favorites from 2016, all these different collections. And so if I want to see what my favorite pictures are from Iceland, I click on that over there on the left side, and there's 44 pictures from Iceland, and there they are. Those are my 44 favorite photos from Iceland. If I want to see some of my favorite macro pictures, so just collections are really easy to create. You just click on the plus sign and come down to create collection, and you give it a name. So let's call this one Lightroom Test. And I do that because I probably have a regular Lightroom test that I've used in other ones. And so now I have a folder down here called Lightroom Test, and it has nothing in it. So if I go to, doesn't matter where I get them, all photos, let's go there. So let's say I want to have that photo in there. Where's my Lightroom Test photo folder? Okay, so I can just drag that over there. If I want to have that one and that one and that one, I can select those three, drag them to Lightroom Test, and you can see I now have 4 photos in Lightroom Test, and there's those 4 photos. So that is a real powerful way to create a collection of images that are related on however you want. You know, it can be by date, it can be by subject, it can be by, you know, whatever you want, however you want to put pictures in there. And you know, if you decide later you don't want that photo in the collection, you just select it, click on it, hit the delete key on your keyboard, and it's gone out of the collection, but it's still in the catalog where it was before. So you don't have to worry about if you delete something from your collection, are you going to lose it? No, you're just getting it out of the collection. And you can have photos in multiple collections. And so one of the neat things of Lightroom is you see these little icons. Let me make this a little bit bigger. You can make the thumbnails bigger too. Let me get back. I got a little too heavy on it. There we go. So if you can see these little icons over here, they all tell you something. So this one is adjustments have been made. This is it's in a collection. Oh, that's the crop one. I'm sorry. That one's a collection. If I click on it, it'll show me what collections that's in. So that's a quick way to figure out, did I put that in a collection or not? Yeah, you did. And this one has the keywords is with that little icon. So each one of these has little icons depending on what you've done to it and what you haven't. So one of the other cool things that they have is smart collections. So you can create a collection that will automatically do a search and add that photo to that collection. So this is a smart collection for black and white. So let me see what our rules are on this one.
Or are you on your phone?
Somebody talking? Oh, okay. If you'd mute, please, if you don't have a question, that would help us out. Thank you. The smart collection is black and white. So anytime I create a black and white photo now, it will automatically come into this collection of black and white photos. So you can see I have 232. So it knows when a picture's been converted to black and white. This is one I just shot at the workshop in Acadia, Maine, a couple weeks ago. And I didn't do anything. As soon as I made it black and white, it automatically came into this collection. A collection of fall foliage. And so you can have
Loren?
Yes.
Could you run that by me again? I'm kind of lost how the smart collection works.
Okay, so a smart collection has rules applied to it that add the photo to the collection. So in this one, if my keywords contain Italy, and if I selected it as one of my favorites, I flagged it as a pick, which we'll talk about in a minute, it will automatically put that photo in Lightroom. So when I go to Venice for a workshop in March, and I come back, or while I'm there even, I'll take my laptop with me, and as I get pictures that I really like, they will automatically be added to this collection. So I don't even have to drag them over. It is looking for, there's hundreds of different criteria it could be. It could be based on, so this is one that I created that has shot with my 100mm lens. So you can see there's 4,578 photos in that. So every time I shoot a picture with my 100 macro, it ends up in this collection. And I mainly did that to show it as a demonstration. But so it will look for ratings. It will look for source. It looks for the date. You can have a collection from the last month. You can have a collection of June of 2013, or however you want. All this different information, you can have it search and automatically add images to that collection. And you can tell the smart collections because they have the little yellow wheel icon there in the corner. So these are all my family photos. So anytime I put a family keyword on a photo, it automatically comes in here. And I love to tell suggest to people that if you have 2 kids and one of them's your favorite, you might want to have a favorite son collection and not the other kid because he's a brat. So you can just automatically, as soon as you tag it Bobby, boom, Bobby picture goes right into the collection.
So I had a question. Are you recording the session for today? Because I might have to step out in a little while, and I would like to see whatever I miss.
Yes, I am recording it, and it will be on my YouTube channel, which I will put on the link on my website, and I will add it to the meetup description for tonight too. You'll have to look in the past meetups to get to it, but it either be on my website on the event about tonight, or on the meetup about tonight. So,
all right, thank you.
And if you don't get it, email me and I'll send it to you.
All right, thank you.
So you can see here I have a smart collection for vertical photos. So these are all the verticals that I've shot. So it can just search all kinds of crazy things. Any of them have like a yellow label. We'll talk about labels here in a bit, but all kinds of things here. So whatever, anything you can think of, because Lightroom is a database, and so it does a great job of finding things as long as it has that data, and it will automatically throw pictures in there. And again, you can drop them out or whatever you want. Any other questions on, most of the stuff I'm going over pretty quick tonight, I know, but
Loren, is there a tab for smart collections? How did you get into that?
So under collections, when you create one, you can create a smart collection.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so when you create smart collection, it says, do you want to match all of these, any of these? And again, you have all of these different things that you can choose from.
Okay.
To sort, and you can have multiple things. So you can say, I want all the ones that I shot on today, and that are vertical, aspect ratio is vertical, and with the camera, whatever, focal length, if I want it to be a 50mm lens, and so all of that stuff, it'll sort it right down for you automatically.
Okay, thank you.
Now you can do all that manually too, but the beauty of a collection is, boom, right here. So, and you can have collections inside of collections too. So you can get deeper than that. So for the demonstration tonight, I created a demo one with some photos in it to work on. That way I don't have to go searching around for which photos do I want to work on tonight. I can just click on that demo, and there they are.
So it looks to me like you're better off to put as many keywords for each photo as possible so that you can file it in a variety of different places.
Exactly. The more keywords, the better.
Okay,
You can't have too many keywords. I think you can have too many collections, and I'm getting on the verge of that. As you can see, I have to scroll down quite a bit. So I'm going to start getting a little more selective with my collections. But, because you don't want to have 250 collections, because then then you're scrolling through things and having to search again. So a limited number of collections, but you can help organize it by putting collections inside of collections. So I display photos at art shows. So I have collections for the ones that I do as 5x7 prints or 8x12s or 16x24s or all of that, or metal or whatever I'm doing. So each individual one has those, and I can close that up so it keeps it a little bit less cluttered. Okay, so in the middle, so Lightroom is set up in 3 panels at all times, and they are a real highly technical name. The one on the left is called the left panel. The one in the middle is called the center, not middle, and then you have the right panel, and they change with the different modules. And so Lightroom has 7 different modules. The library, which is where everything is stored. The develop module, which is where you make adjustments. It has a map module, which will, if you have GPS on your camera, it will plot photos on the map for you based on the GPS coordinates. You can manually add them also. Let me see if I can find a cluster of photos. I don't use the map module much. I don't find it too helpful. And they haven't updated that for quite a while, so that tells me that they don't like it either. They have a book module, which will let you create books. Did I click? I did, and it's going slow. And so you can add photos to pages and multiple photos on a page, and then they have a printing service which will let you do print it. You send the whole thing to them, and they will print it and send you a book. They haven't updated this for quite a while either, and there's others online that do better jobs of it than this does. So the book module, I don't use a whole lot either. Actually, never. Slideshow will let you create a slideshow of whatever photos you have selected. It is a pretty slow module also. So I find it having limited use, so I don't use it much. The print module is very good, very powerful. I used to print everything out of Photoshop, and now I do all my printing from Lightroom rather than Photoshop. And so it gives me a lot of control over the size. If I want to put multiple pictures on one sheet of paper, I can do that and then cut them later, because I print a lot of my own, but I also send a lot out. So it will let me do picture packages, so I can have, make them whatever size I want on the page. If I want to do an orange border around them, I would never, but let me turn that off. I must have showed that to somebody last time. So lots of options there.
Loren?
Yes.
How can we specify a specific size on when we drag the picture for printing into one page?
So there's 2 ways of doing that. First, which we haven't talked about yet, you have to crop it to the size you want. So the camera shoots a 2:3 aspect ratio, which makes a traditional 4:6 print. If you want to have a 5:7 print, that's a different crop. You end up cropping the ends off somewhat. So first you have to crop it in the develop module. And then if you just want to do one picture as a 5:7, this is a full frame. Let me see if I can. Well, so if I wanted to print this photo, I can. Right now, I have the paper set up for 16 by 24 inch, but I would change my paper setup, and then, you know, I can print a, you know, whatever size I want on that 16 by 24 piece of paper. So right now I'm doing about an 8 by 16, you know, so it's doing a crop for me. So you can change your cell size within the page if you're doing just a single image on your page. If you're sending it out to be printed, you don't go through this. This is only for printing to a printer that's hooked up to your computer. If you're going to send them to a lab, you export them back out of the library module, which we'll talk about at some point. Not yet. Okay. So then also the other module in Lightroom is the web module, which is really antiquated and old, an antique. It creates HTML pages for you, which nobody does anymore, very few anyway. So that one's pretty worthless too. So really, there's three things in Lightroom that are extremely well done: library, develop, and print. And those are the ones they've been focusing on for several years. So Lightroom itself comes in three different ways, and it might only be two ways. It depends how you look at it. Let me get back to the library so I'm not chomping too much here. So this is what you're seeing here is called Lightroom CC Classic. So this is the look of the original Lightroom. And Lightroom is now sold as a subscription model only. You have to pay them monthly or annually to use the software. If you stop paying, you are limited in what you can do with the photos at that point. You can't add more photos. You can't make changes to your photos until December or last fall, maybe it was earlier. If you stop paying, you couldn't do anything with your photos, including export them or do anything that see any of the changes you made, which really was cheap on Adobe's part. They came around on that. So, but essentially they have you for life. Once you start on the subscription, they have you for life. So the subscription is essentially $10 a month. And so the classic version also includes Photoshop for that $10 a month. They also have a new version they came out with last fall called Lightroom CC. Now, this one's Lightroom CC Classic. Why they tried to get some confusing, they don't know, but they did. So Lightroom CC is entirely cloud-based. So you don't store your photos on your local hard drive. You store it in the cloud. You don't use keywords. It uses a recognition program, which is absolutely amazing. Actually, let me see if I fire this up, if it'll show on the screen for you guys. Okay, it will. So this is the CC version, and it looks totally different, as you can see. The whole layout, and it doesn't do as much as the classic version. Hey, there's a new version up. I'm fairly certain they will be adding all the things that the classic does, but they wanted to get this out and they wanted to make it do things and work, and so they left some things out so they didn't make it work bad. But it has an amazing ability for searching, and so if you search for, say, tree, it actually looks through your photos for the trees that are in the photo. So these photos they didn't look like keywords. It looked at the actual photo and said, oh yeah, there's a tree in that photo. Now, see, it fooled them on a couple of them because those kind of look like trees, but it's just amazing. You know, if you do car and it's this fast, you know, I mean, yeah, there's the old lady in Guatemala didn't have a car, but it's train cars. It's really amazing how this search, I mean, this is, you know, the artificial intelligence actually looking at the image itself rather than keywords to do the searches. So I think the CC version is best for people who shoot a lot of iPhone pictures or or use their iPhone or their tablet. It can be Android too. Use their smartphone or their tablet a lot, and you can make adjustments on the fly, and no matter where you are, you can see them. When you get the subscription for the classic version, you also get a copy of CC, and there are ways to transfer photos between the two, but you basically want to be using one or the other. And I find that people who so the CC version is a little easier to use, less complicated because all the photos are stored in the cloud. You don't have to think about them again. Adobe is not going to lose your photos, and they're not going to steal them, and they're not going to let anybody else steal them, or they'd be out of business tomorrow. So I have no security problems at all with what they're doing with that. But if you're feeling like classic is too complex, which I don't think it is when you really take your time to learn it, CC might be the way to go. Or if you don't want to store photos in your house, you want to store them in the cloud, CC is good. A lot of the things that you want to do with your photos, you can still do your manipulation in CC. And as soon as you do it on your computer, it shows up on your phone or your tablet or the other way around. So it's really pretty cool. So I mentioned there's 3 versions of classic. Well, CC costs the same amount as the classic version, but you get a terabyte of storage online, and you can buy more. The third way is the old version 6, and you can still find copies of that some places. Version 6 looks like classic. There are quite a few features that are not in version 6 that I think are tremendous, and they have stopped supporting it as of the end of the year. So if you buy or have version 6 or a version before that, they are not going to do any updates to it. If a new camera comes out, it won't recognize those file types. At some point, your computer software will upgrade and it won't work on that computer anymore. So, or if you get a new computer, it might not work on that. So at some point, it's going to be obsolete. But for the next couple of years, it'll still be working fine, I think. But I think anybody who's doing anything with photos and enjoys it at all, $10 a month is, if you look at it as it's only a couple cups of coffee a month, that's not bad. If you look at it, oh, it's $120 a year, yeah, that does stink. But it's the price to pay to get very high quality workout. And like I say, you have to do something to every photo, so you might as well do it in Lightroom and send Adobe their money. Yuck. So the library module also has, let me get over to my photos here, the ability to do a quick develop, and you can use presets. Lightroom comes with a lot of presets, and you can download them, you can buy them. A lot of people give them away. But let me see which photo I want to work on. Okay, so this one, if I want to make that one a black and white, I can come and choose one of the black and white filters, and you can see there's a whole lot of different ones. Let's see what black and white landscape looks like, and it made it black and white. And then you can still do adjustments if you want to make it dark. You can do adjustments here, making it lighter, making it darker. A lot of different things you can do with it here, or you can go to the develop module and still make additional adjustments. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. So there are. Let's try another preset here and see what it looks, how it looks.
Loren, I can still see your picture, and it's covering the controls.
You can see what?
I can see you, and it's covering the controls on the right.
So you can click in the box. You can click in the box that has. It looks like there's up in the upper right corner.
Okay.
There's 2 boxes. The one on the left. Try clicking on that and see if that changes the view for you.
Okay.
And drag it out of the way.
All right then.
I'm sorry you have to look at me.
Oh no, I just couldn't see the controls. You're good. Okay.
Well, I can understand not wanting to see that. That's brutal.
All right, we're good now.
Okay,
Hey,
good.
Loren, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are you able to save the photo two ways? Like I like to play with black and white, but still keep the color version too. So could I do it and save it both ways?
Yes. So there's a couple of ways of doing that, actually several. Remember, we're not doing anything to the original. So this is essentially a preview copy. You can make what they call a virtual copy, which is another copy, but it is still using your original file for the information, and then it is using a new preview. So if I right-click on the picture and come down to Create Virtual Copy and click there, I will now have two of them. And you can see in the corner, there's the corners turned up. It looks like a page turned up. So that tells you that that's a virtual copy. So you might notice all the ones that I have here in this demo, I'm using virtual copies, so I'm not changing ones that I've made other changes to. So I can now have one of them as a black and white and one as a color photo. So good question, thank you. So as I make changes to one, it doesn't affect the other one. It only the one I'm working on. When we get into the develop module, I'll show you another way of doing that also, because you have a history of everything you've ever done to your photo, so you can see where you black and white and go back to that point.
That was a very good question. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so again, the quick develop module is here. On the very top in the library module, you have a histogram, so you can see your tonal values of your photo, and it also shows you your ISO, your lens. This is shot at ISO 100, 16mm lens, f20 for an eighth of a second, sixth of a second. My eyes are going bad. Sixth of a second is my shutter speed. So it gives you all that information right there all the time. So as you're clicking on different photos, you see that will change. It also gives you the ability to add tons of metadata to your photo. So metadata is technically data about data. So you can add a title, you can add a caption, you can put copyright information, you can put location, who created it. It automatically puts in the size and your exposure, your lens, your ISO, what kind of camera it is, what kind of lens it is. So it gathers all that information. If you have GPS in the camera, it puts the GPS location there. So there's a ton of metadata that you can add to it too. The more metadata you have, the more searchable your photos are. So the more that you can, more ways to sort it and find it. So depending what I'm doing, I will add a title. This one has a title and it has a caption. You can see this one doesn't have a title because it's not showing up here. So the one that does have a title has a title showing there. And then there are lots of different ways to sort the photos. So I'm going to close the panel on the left here, just so we have a little more room. And so you can see on the bottom here, the thumbnails, I can make my thumbnails different sizes so I can get as many photos in as I want. I can also, if I double click on the photo, it brings it up to be a single view, or double click again and it goes back to the grid view. So as I'm searching through my photos in my workflow, when I import my photos and I'm going through and I'm deleting, I'm doing also two other things at the same time. So as I go through my photos, right after I import them, bless you, I mark them one of three ways. I either say they're terrible, and just on the keyboard, you tap the X key and that marks it as ready to be deleted. Or I mark it as a pick, which is P on the keyboard, and that puts a little white flag on the photo. So you can see here I have, this one has been selected as a pick, which means it's one of my favorites, so it has a white flag. So most of these photos in this are going to see, some of them have white flags, some of them don't have anything. if I was going to delete it and tap the X, it would have a black flag and set it as rejected. And then I would later reject it, delete it. I would later delete the rejected photos. But I don't really want to reject that one. So I'm going to click on that black flag and it goes away. So my initial editing workflow is I decide either a picture is terrible, great, or in between. If it's in between, I don't put any marking on it. And so I can really quickly decide, okay, is that a pretty good photo? Is it a great photo? Is it a bad photo? And then that helps me eliminate right away, and it also helps me find my favorites right away. So if I'm going to come back and go to all photos. So on the bottom here, I can sort by lots of different things: capture time, the orders entered, ratings, the pick, file names, aspect ratios. So I can sort my photos by all kinds of things. So I right now have it selected as pick. And so these are the photos that I've determined after the shoot that they are my favorites from that shoot. So I can scroll through them, or I can go back to the grid view and see them all in a grid and add them, make them bigger by changing the size of the thumbnail. I can also give them a star rating. So let's say this one. So when I started out using Lightroom, I started with a star ratings. I would say, okay, that one's a 1, that one's a 2, that one's a 3, that one's a 4, that one's a 5. And I real soon forgot, is 5 better than 1? 5-star hotel's better than a 1-star hotel, but I want to be number 1 when I am in a race. I don't want to be number 5. So what's 2 as opposed to 3? And I got too confused. So I said, screw that. I'm going with it's either good or bad or in between. Fewer choices. And the same thing with colors. You can do color, you can select, you can give them colors. And I tried that for a while, and I had Post-it notes hanging on my wall by my computer saying blue means this, yellow means this, green means this. And I got real confused again. So now I just do picks, and I do a yellow for one thing. And those are photos that I've posted on Instagram. So that's the only color I use, is one color. And that way I can quickly see, okay, I've already put that one on Instagram. I don't have to put it on again. And so that's my quickie visual cue for that.
Loren,
Yes.
you mentioned earlier that for those ones that you don't want, you just press X.
Yes.
So if you have a bunch of them, and you wanted to delete them, how do you bring in all the X's?
So if you've selected everything as a rejected, tapped it with an X. If you go up under photo, come clear to the bottom, delete rejected photos. And I might not have any because I do have one. So good. So it's going to ask you, do you just want to remove it from the catalog, or do you want to delete it from the disk and remove it from the catalog? And you want to delete it from the disk. You don't want to, the only thing worse than having photos laying around in Lightroom that are bad is having them laying around on your hard drive and you don't know what they are or where they are. So if you're going to take them out of the catalog, you probably want to delete them from your disk also. So you click on delete from disk, and it will erase it from your hard drive and take it out of the catalog.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So you have, you can do colors, and you can sort by color. So I can click on label color and sort, and now it's going to show me in order all the ones that I've selected as yellow or whatever I do. So you have the ability to do lots of sorting within Lightroom and all your pictures, and you can sort within a collection too. So my Italy, I'm sorting. If I sort by capture time, so it will show the newest photos at the top, or I can reverse it and show the oldest photos at the top. Whichever way, you can change that all around. And if you have two photos that are kind of similar, you don't really know which one you like better, you can bring them both up at the same time. So you can say, well, let me make that a little smaller so I can see. There we go. So you can say, okay, now I can look back and forth and tell which one I like better, and compare them, and make a decision which one's better, and give that one a pick or delete or whatever however you want to label yours. You don't have to label, you know, I think it's especially just doing the pick versus nothing at all. It's a great way to quickly find your favorite photos. You know, you don't want to just import all your photos and leaving them all in there forever, because you're soon going to fill up, and then you have a lot of bad photos in there that you can't do anything with. Okay, so let's go back to the grid view here. There's some other things here I'm not going to go into now, but you know, lots of different ways to sort your photos. You can also do searches based on lots of different things. If you want to see everything you ever shot with your 70 to 200 photo, 70 to 200 lens, or whatever, you know, or whatever attribute there is, you know, you can search by 3 stars or, you know, color yellow. There's all the yellow ones within that folder, within that collection, my Italy collection. So those are my Italy pictures that I have put on Instagram. Okay, so any questions on that?
I do.
Okay.
So X is for the photos that you want to delete.
Right.
And what do you use for the ones that you want to keep?
P, pick.
Pick. And what is that on the keyboard? Is the P?
P. Just tap the P. You don't need anything else. And same with the X. You just tap the X on the keyboard or the P on the keyboard.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And Lauren, when you wanted to put the 2 pictures together side by side, how did you pick them again?
Down here, so you select one, and or select 2 of them, and then come down here, the X, Y.
Perfect. Thank you.
Or if you want to do 4, you can come down here and do that also, or 5. Let's come back to grid. Let's do 5. That way it looks different on the page. So you can pull up any number by using this icon. So if you want to have the bird in there too.
Okay, so you hold down Control and you select each one.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, I have a question about keywords. Can I go back there, or
Sure.
you finish?
No,
All right.
very important. Yes.
Where do you enter the keywords?
Okay, that's I guess I probably should have said that. Over here on the right side, there's a tab that's keywording, and you just type there.
That's
and
under the metadata.
under the library.
Okay.
And then right under, you'll see keywording.
Okay.
Right under the quick develop, and it could be closed, and you just click on the tab like that. So when you start typing, you'll see that previous used keywords will come up. So if I'm going to mark this one as colorful, you can see I've already used colorful, and it's there. So I don't hopefully type wrong, spell things wrong. Also has keyword suggestions based on the last keywords you've used. So you can just click on extraordinary if you want that on there. I don't know why I have that, people. And it also has a list of all the keywords you've ever used and how many photos go with that. So Arial, I have 382 photos. And if I want to see those 382 photos, if I click right there, they're going to all load right up. So there's all those photos. So that's another way to find your photos very quickly if you keyword. And you can see I have a lot of keywords.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. can you please
Yes.
go back to the explanation for if you want to keep one colored photo and one black and white photo?
Yes. So that's called virtual copy.
Mhm.
So any photo, so say this photo, let me make it, yeah. So this photo, if I want to have make a change to it and have one way and one another, I just come down, I right click on the photo, come down to virtual copy, create virtual copy,
Mhm.
and then it will create a second copy of it. And in the corner, we'll add a little thing that looks like a page turned up, and it'll say 2 of 2, and this one's 1 of 1 when you move your cursor over. So now if I want to make a quick develop change to that one, let's just grab something really wacky here. And no, that's not what I'm trying to do. Hit a preset. Let's do cross process, see what that looks like. Okay, that made it look a little different. So now if I just want to see those two side by side, I can close the left pane so I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. So you can see one of them, they look different because I changed that preset. Or if I want to make that one darker or lighter, I went the light way. Okay. So virtual copy is what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, so there's some other things happening in the library module, but that pretty much hits a lot of the biggies. So I'm going to jump over to the develop module now, unless anybody has any questions there. Okay. So the develop module is where all the fun is. The library is the technical, boring stuff. The the develop module, and again, it has 3 panels. You can close one or you can close 2 if you want. And you now have different looks. You still have the catalog, so you can see all the catalogs, and you can still see the collections on the side. So if you want to go into collections, you still have that. We'll come back down to what that other stuff does here in a few minutes. But now we have some different things going on. Oops, I jumped back out of which one do I want to work on first. So I'm in the develop module. So you can see now the right side. So now on the left side, I'm starting on the left instead of the right. We have presets, so you can do all those presets again, either ones that you've created or ones that you've purchased, or downloaded, or the ones that come with it. So as you roll your cursor over the different presets, they will show up automatically so you can see what they look like. Pretty cool. So if I like that look, I can do that. So all these presets are over here for processing. You have a history panel that shows you the full history of everything you've done to the photo. So if I come back to the virtual copy or the reset, so as I make changes to it, it will add to the history, and at any point I can come back into the history and see what I did and go from that point again. On the right side, again, we have the histogram. Now you can see we still have the exposure data, but when I move my mouse over the cursor, or my cursor over the photo, wherever the cursor is, it's showing me the RGB values, the tonal values of the photo. So you know if you have a pure black or pure white or what color you have in between. Knowing what that means and does takes a lot of experience. So don't worry about that a whole lot at the beginning. But you have some major controls now over your photo. So this is a photo. I'm going to close the left panel so we can make it a little bit bigger so we can see it better. And we have a film strip across the bottom, so we can select photos across the bottom just by clicking on them there. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so our picture will be a little bit bigger and easier to see. So we have some a lot of things we can do to the photo here. You can change the temperature, which is the white balance. So if I want to make it bluer, I can move it blue to the left. If I want to make it warmer, yellow to the right. If I want to change the tint, it makes the red or green. If you look at your computer, you'll see that the colors are showing up in the bar there, so you don't have to remember. So blue is that way, yellow is that way, green and red. I find I change my temperature an awful lot. I usually warm it up from what the original was. And I rarely touch tint because things usually aren't, the white balance is usually not off green or red, it's off yellow or blue. Change your exposure. You can change your contrast. So anytime you change something, move a slider, I'm just clicking and dragging on the icon to move the slider. And if something that I don't want to have happen, if I double click on the name, it will take it back to the original setting, which is a lot easier than trying to slide it right back to where it belongs. So the highlights affect the brighter parts of the picture. So if I darken the highlights by moving it to the left, you see the like in the sky is getting darker, but the trees in the middle aren't being affected because they're not highlights, so they're not the brighter parts. Same thing with the shadows. You see the trees are getting darker now or getting brighter, but the sky's not changing at all. Whites are the whitest part of the whites. So same thing there. And the blacks are the same. So you're changing only the really, really dark tones. Underneath that is clarity, which is something that's a little hard to conceive. It changes the contrast in the midtones, but it tends to make pictures look sharper. So you can see just from 0, and as I increase it, especially when you're looking at the trees here on the left, they look sharper as I increase the contrast in the midtones, and the sky is getting sharper. Dehaze will take the haze out of a photo. So you can see the hillside is a little bit hazy here in this photo. So if I just slide that a little bit, boom, that thing's just popping already. And you can dehaze too much and get that nice effect. You know, all of this is seasoning to taste. It's whatever you like. So I do nature-based fine art photography, and I want my photos to look like what I saw. So I will do tonal changes to them, develop changes, but I don't want it to look like I did. You know, I don't want people to look at my photos and say, "Oh, he worked on that baby in Photoshop." I want it to look natural, but that doesn't mean, you know, that doesn't mean look like the raw photo. So I don't oversaturate. I will give it some saturation, and I'm sure not going to do anything that looks like that because I've never seen clouds that look like that. But it's a taste thing. You know, you can make your pictures look however you want. You shot them; they're your photos. If you like them, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So I'm you know, I do mine my way, but I don't have any judgment on how anybody else tones their photos. So
That's a quick question, Loren.
yes.
Is there a way that while you're manipulating all these different sliders, you can click back to see what your original photo was? I admit I use Instagram all the time, and I can just hold my finger on the photo and it goes back to show me briefly what it really looked like.
Absolutely. So over here in the history, you can see there was none when we started. And so as I roll my cursor over these different things, as I changed everything in there. So if I want to go back to this point, I can just click there and the photo goes back to that point. Or if I want to go back to this point, or if I want to go back up to my end, or all the way to the beginning.
Perfect. Thank you.
There. So in the history, you have a total history of everything you've ever done to the photo. There is another cool thing called snapshots. Snapshots let you create, guess what? Snapshots of the photos. And so you can name it or you can use the time. And so as you're going through, if you're say, wow, clouds were great, I can create a snapshot of that. And let's say here, just for Hoots and Hollers, I'm going to create a snapshot called water is good. And so then I can just click back and forth in that, and you know, if I made a black and white version, so let's just jump on real quick and make it a black and white. I can create a snapshot called black and white. And now I can just click on any of those or roll over them and see how, hey, that one doesn't look too bad as a black and white. Looks great in color though. But I can create snapshots as I'm going along. And that's, I do that a fair amount of time if I'm making radical changes and I'm not sure if I want to, which one do I like better? Well, create a snapshot, go back and look, and you can make as many snapshots as you want. So that's another way to accomplish this, the same thing. So you know, I shoot everything in RAW format in my camera. I use a Canon, but that doesn't matter. And almost all RAW photos are flat, lack contrast, need some color boost and some sharpening. And I find that if I immediately go into a photo and adjust the blacks and make them a little bit darker, immediately my photo looks better. Just without doing anything else. I added the haze on this one. So at any point I can look at my before. Well, so whoever asked me that question, I gave you the hard answer. If you want to see the changes you made compared to your original photograph, if you hit the backslash key, the one that goes to the left, which is usually above the return key or the enter key on your keyboard, you'll see the before and then the after. So the quick way, rather than going through the history or doing snapshots, is just hitting your before or after key, and you'll get there. So you can see this is how I actually toned this photo. So you know what's you know, when I hit the reset, you know, that's what it looked like in, that's what the camera saw. This is how I love to say it. This is what the camera saw, and that's what I saw.
Loren,
Yes.
when you say hit the backslash key,
Yep.
is it a toggle?
No, on the keyboard, the backslash, right above the return or enter key on your keyboard.
Yeah. What I'm trying to ask is it a toggle? So if you hit it again, it will go to the change.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Tap it and go back and forth.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, you know, we can do black and whites also. You know, we played with this one a little bit. One of the beauties of one of the great things of black and white is you can adjust the tones separately, you know, and sometimes when you do a dehaze in black and white, that sky really comes in. Isn't that wild? Adds a little drama there. Punch the clarity a little bit. Suddenly we went from that to that quick without doing much at all. So black and whites are a great thing. I'll show you another black and white here in a minute or two. So if you have a picture like this where you have a building and it's kind of leaning, well, that's not good. I want it to be straight. So if I scroll all the way down and I come to a couple of things. One, I can come to lens correction, and if I click enable profile corrections, it will see what lens I used, and you'll notice as I turn that on and off, it feels like it kind of pops, bubbles. That's taking the aberrations out of the lens and flattening it out. And then when I come down to transform, I can make this straighten up. So I'll try an auto first and see if that gets close enough, which I don't think it will on this one. Okay, so now if I get on vertical and just make the vertical a little bit more better, as I like to say, and make people cringe when I say more better. There we go. So now I went from, if I just turn off the transform, you can see how it was leaning backwards, and now it's straight. So you have a lot of control. You can go crazy on that. Ooh. But it'll straighten out a lot of buildings for you. Yes.
Is there a way we can work on that light that's coming out from behind the object and maybe make it brighter? Can we do that?
You betcha. So when I'm toning this photo, there are a lot of things I want to do to it. That I want to make this color more intense. I want to make my sky pop a little bit more. I want to get some detail in the church. So this is a church painted black in Iceland. So it's not going to have a lot of detail already, but it'll have some. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring out some detail in the shadows. So I'm just going to go into the shadows and brighten them up. Looking better already. Then I'm going to hop on the clarity and see what that does for me. It's going to make the sky pop. It's going to make that ground pop. This one doesn't need dehaze. I'm going to add a little vibrance to make it a little more vibrant. I'm going to add a little saturation. Now, saturation is where you can really get things too much. You can just overdo it way too much, and I hate oversaturated photos. So I keep it. I try to keep that under control, but we still don't have as much brightness in the highlights as we want. So we can just darken those highlights a little bit, or just darken the whites and see what happens. Let's pump that clarity a little bit more. I think we can get away with that. So now we're bringing out a lot of detail that we weren't getting before. So let's get that vibrance up a little bit. And so one of the other cool things that happens is, well, we know we'd like to have this sky down here a little bit different. So I can come into the individual colors under HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance, and just adjust an individual color. So if I want to make it more orange, I can bring the orange up. Or if I want to take the orange out, I can change the saturation on the orange, or red. I can add more red in the reds. But you can see that when I increase the saturation on the orange, it doesn't affect the blue sky at all, because there's no orange and blue. If I did the overall saturation, it would overdo everything or underdo. So by adjusting just the individual colors, I can really make things look different. And you can adjust the luminance, which is the brightness essentially of the color. So if you want that orange to glow more, or the blue to become a little brighter or darker, whichever way you feel like, you can adjust that individual color. Now it adjusts the color within the whole photo, not just the sky. So if there's blue on the door, the blue on the door is going to change as well as the blue in the sky. But I'm feeling a little oversaturated now on the whole thing, so I'm just going to back saturation down a little bit. But that's what we started with, and we got to there pretty quick. And so, a lot of pictures have, well, let's try this one. So, you're also able to crop. So on the top is a row of tools. So this one, I like shapes, and I like to eliminate things that don't add to the photo. So this one, I'm just going to crop up from the bottom. And I love my diagonals in the corner, and I'm going to bring that sky down a little bit. So there. So now when I double click, go with that. So let's make my blacks pop. Let's add some clarity, see what that does. Let's see what the dehaze does to that sky. A little too much. It's affecting the wheat that's been cut here. This is increase my vibrance. little saturation, too much saturation real quick there. So this is another one where I might, you know, I might want to have the sky bluer, and if I change my color temperature, it takes the color out of the wheat because the wheat's yellow. But if I go yellow and make the wheat feel a little warmer, I lose the color in the sky. Now, obviously, I'm overdoing it for demonstration purposes, but so let's just let's do it there. So if I just want to change the sky, I can do that, and this is called a graduated filter. And I just click from the, I'm dragging from the top, and as I drag down, I'm creating a mask over the photo. And I can see the mask by clicking down here in this box. So everything in red is what will be affected. And so the direction that I drag my graduated filter controls which direction the mask is applied and how much. So everything from this line to the direction I started dragging from, it happens at 100%. Everything from this line to the middle is 100% down to about 25%. From this line is 25% to 0, and below this line, nothing happens. So if I hide my mask and just say I change the exposure, you can see how gradual that is. As I make the lines farther apart, it becomes more gradual. Or if I move my lines close together, it becomes a very hard line rather than a gradual line. And I can move that around. So obviously I don't want to change my exposure that much. But so now I have a whole lot of controls I can do only within that part of the picture. So as I change my color temperature now and make that sky bluer, it doesn't change the wheat in the foreground. Now I'm overdoing it again just to show you, but I wouldn't make my sky look like that because it just doesn't look real. But you can probably see that in this part of the wheat, it's changing the color because it's overlapping there. So if I'm showing my mask, I can see that that mask is over that. So I can erase part of my mask so it only hits the sky. And so if I hit a brush here and click erase, and I tell it to auto mask, now where I click, you can see it's a minus sign. It's going to erase, you can see it erasing the mask based on what color I started clicking in. And so as I'm going, you can see it's erasing the mask from the wheat, but not the sky, which is what I want. And that's part of the, so if I want to click up there. So now, if I turn off my mask, and it's just for demo, I'm going to make it really dark. You can see it I didn't do a good job of deleting my mask there. It doesn't change the field at all. It only changes the sky. So that lets me do local control over the photos and change only part of it, which is a great thing. So again, they also just came out with a new way to do that, and they have what's called a range mask, and you can just do it by color. So if I click on the color and select this, it'll only mask. Let me show my mask. So it'll only mask the blue and not the grass. Really amazing thing they did there. So this lets me, let me turn off my mask, make adjustments only to that part of the photo. Let's kind of make it kind of real looking. And yeah, I want to add clarity up there. I took too much out there, didn't I? So you can see, you can just make lots of local changes that will really make your photos pop. I must have changed my exposure there. There we go. So, I mean, you can do crazy things like, you know, if you want to make your sky black and white and your foreground color, you can do that just by taking the saturation out of the picture. Kind of cool effect. Not if you're going for reality, but that's okay. Or bring it back. So also up here is an adjustment brush, and that lets you do the same thing, except you can just brush an area. So if I have my auto mask turned on and I show my selected mask overlay and say I just want to change the green part of the field. So now as I drag my mouse and just paint across it, it's only selecting the green part of the field, not the yellow, not the sky. Absolutely amazing. So if I turn that off, I can make my adjustments. So if I want to, say if I want to make that really stupid, bright looking, I want to make that green just really scream. I can do that. Hey, it caught on fire. So using the adjustment brush lets you just select a very small portion of the picture, or big. You can do the whole thing if you want, but it lets you do a very local selection and make changes to that just local area. Again, I did it pretty quick, so I missed some areas, but very powerful stuff there. And I use that a lot. I use that an awful lot. Some photos, I have some spots in it that I want to get rid of. I don't know. Sorry about that. How do I turn that off? Uh-oh. Sorry. So say in this picture, I wanted to get rid of the highlights in the water. So I can come up here and grab come on, what's the name of it? My brain just went out on me. It's going to tell me. Grab that tool and
Clone.
Thank you. It's not clone though.
No.
Spot removal.
Spot
Spot
removal.
Thank you. It's a spot removal tool. So you can see I have a target, and as I move my scroll wheel, I can make it bigger or smaller. And if I want to get rid of this white spot, I can click there, and it's going to find another spot that's about the same color and clone it right in there. And I can just go running across the picture and cleaning up these spots really fast and get rid of them. And I have just all clean water. Now, for major work, I was afraid that was going to happen. Sorry. For major work, this is where I go to Photoshop rather than Lightroom, because if I say I wanted to eliminate the fish for some reason, that would be really tough in Lightroom. It'd be a piece of cake in Photoshop. I could do it in 15 seconds in Photoshop, but I'd have to be hours in Lightroom for that. But now as I hit OK, you can see all the spots that I cleaned up are gone. So this is good for small pieces, but not major work, or you're going to go nuts really quick.
Loren,
Yes.
when you use the spot removal, it's the Lightroom would make an intelligent guess on which to pattern it again.
Yes. So
Okay.
what it does is it actually copies. So you can see when I click on one of these, it copies part of the picture, another part of the picture into the part that you selected. So you can see that little arrow. So it's telling you where it went from. So if I wanted to put a fish over there, actually, let me do this. This would be kind of fun. So let me get something that's about the size of the fish. I should have made my cursor bigger. So it's going to find a spot. So if I wanted to bring the fish over, there's the fish. Now that looks pretty stupid, but you know, there's applications for that. Poor fish. Yes.
So you can clone it.
It has. So there is within that. There are two options. One they call clone and one they call heal. If you do clone, it copies an exact copy of the from into the to. The heal, it uses algorithms to blend it in also. So the difference being, if I was going to do this and do it as a clone, well, it would do a very harsh clone. So usually you want to use the heal in the spot edit. And anytime you want to get rid of one, you just click on it and you hit the delete key. And this is the one thing that's different in Mac and Windows. You poor Windows folks, you don't get all the fun. In Mac, you get a little cloud and it goes poof. Sorry, Windows, you don't get that.
Loren?
Yes.
So you choose a spot first before hitting the clone?
It samples. So if I want to remove this white spot, I just draw over it, make a glob there. Lightroom looks for a place in the photo that has a very similar looking tonal value to as the place that you highlighted, and we'll copy that in there and heal it or clone it directly, however you want to do.
So you choose the action first, the clone, before putting your cursor on the picture.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Poof. Poof is fun. I like poofing. Okay. So this icon is a red eye reduction. So if you shoot pictures with red eye, it will correct the red eye. I don't have any photos with red eye, so I can't show you. But you just click on the photo. You select that and put the cursor over the eye, and it will suck the red right out of it and make it look pretty good. This tool is called the oval, and it will make an oval selection, an oval mask for you. So just like the graduated filter or the adjustment brush, you can make adjustments within that oval of whatever you want to do. So if you just want to do darken or lighten the outside, you can invert the oval, so you can just do it on the inside. You can change how sharp or how hard you want that oval or the feathering to be, and then you can make changes within that. So that, if you had like the fish, and you might be easier to draw an oval and make your adjustments if you wanted to brighten up the fish or something like that.
Which tool is that? Is that the circle right here?
That's the round circle up here. Yes.
Okay.
I find that one the least useful of the tools. Well, the red eye is the most least useful, but they just added that oval one about a year ago, and they call it the radial filter. Sometimes it's good, a portrait or a face, it'll work nice on, but I find most of the time the adjustment brush or a graduated filter is much handier. So on most photos, I'm increasing the saturation and the color and let me get out of that filter. Okay, so on a picture like this is an old abbey in France with lavender growing in front of it, and it looks pretty flat. So I would go in right away and make those blacks blacker. And you can see how just changing the blacks makes that picture pop a lot more right away. Jump on the clarity, add some clarity to it. I'm not going to dehaze on that one. I'm going to add just a little bit of vibrance and just a little bit of saturation. And the more saturation you do, the crazier the colors get. But that's seasoned to taste. And so we went from our history from that to that. And how long that take me? 20 seconds, 15 seconds. And it's not only because I've done this photo before, but it's most photos don't need a ton of work. They just need a little bit. And if this one has some green in the lavender, where the lavender hasn't grown in yet, if I want to get rid of that green, I just come into the saturation, go to green, desaturate that green, and now the green doesn't show up and it's not a distraction. It just becomes a bare spot in there. So that's a pretty cool thing. When doing people though, so let's do her. So I'm going to crop her first because I don't like this white clump over here. So I'm going to just crop it and move it the way I like it. That's good. Her face is a little too bright, so I'm just going to lower my exposure overall, get her face about right. And that's really making the colors pop pretty nice too. Make sure my blacks are black. Increase my clarity a little bit. See how it feels sharper just doing that? Add a little vibrance. Now on skin tones, you rarely want to add saturation because almost all skin tones have some color in them. And you go pumping on that saturation and you can see all of a sudden, you know, she's going to look really weird really fast. And it doesn't matter how light or dark the complexion, adding saturation is usually a bad idea if you have dominant skin tones in the picture. You can increase the vibrance, and it doesn't, you know, until you get way to the extremes, it doesn't affect the skin tone nearly as much as saturation. So this one where I want to get these colors nice and vibrant, I'm going to use the vibrance. I'm going to skip the saturation. Now I could come up, grab a graduated filter, come up and show my mask. Now you notice that when I started from the bottom, and I'm going to erase the mask around her face. Oops, I hit the wrong thing, sorry. My mask. I'm going to hit the brush, then come down to make sure my auto mask is on. Now I'm going to hit erase here, and I get the minus sign, and I'm going to erase the mask from her skin tones. Make sure I get her skin all cleaned off. Okay, so now I stop hiding the mask so I can actually see what I'm doing. Now if I want to pump in some saturation, it's only going to happen on that cloth on the bottom. It's not hitting her face because I turned the mask off in that area. So it'd be the same way if I want to change the exposure there. You can see it's not affecting her at all because I erased the mask over her face. So I might want to just darken that a little bit and make that a little more intense on the bottom there. Not bad, huh? Now this one, actually, I would lower the highlights a little bit just to bring in a little less on her face. Cool, cool. See, what else did I have here? Transforms. We did that photo. So this is so one thing you'll learn about me, anytime you see a photo I shot at sunrise, you're going to know about it because I got my lazy butt out of bed. This is a sunrise photo. Before sunrise, we got the moon shining bright there. But this is one where, you know, when I shot it, I said, I know that's going to look a lot better after I work on it a little bit. So I'm going to see what dehaze does on this baby. There, we're bringing some color out of that sky that I didn't even see before. Now a little clarity. That's too much. That might be too. So if I bring up the vibrance, bring up the saturation a little bit. I must have too much dehaze going because I don't like the way it's looking. But my sky is getting really nice. My blacks are there. So I can bring down the highlights a little bit. Now I know there's some orange and yellow happening over here that I'm not seeing much of. So if I go down to my HSL and increase saturation in orange, maybe luminance also. Maybe it's red. Maybe I'm crazy. There, we're getting some happening. So now we went from there. So the other thing you can do, let me get out of the mask, is, you know, if I wanted to smooth out the bottom, bring a mask, graduated filter up there. You know, clarity adds contrast, but if you take it the other way or undehaze, it'll make things feel a little smoother. So you can get this kind of fun, wacky, soft feeling going on down there in the foreground, but not affect the sky. Pretty cool too, huh? So a photo like this is one that, you know, before they added dehaze, I guess it's probably been 2 years now. I probably would have thrown this picture away, but you know, when I shot this up in Maine, I'm thinking those clouds up there are going to pop when I get in that dehaze. And so as I crank that up, look what happens. Isn't that amazing? Just hitting on the dehaze a good deal. Make my blacks a little blacker. I might just increase my overexposure a little bit and punch the clarity. Punch my vibrance a little bit. Look, I got a vignette from my lens. So if I come down and hit the profile correction, probably gonna get rid of that vignette. Not much. I must have had something in my way. Wasn't paying attention. So I can do a post-crop vignette and get rid of that. Or I'd crop it. But again, in what, 15 seconds, I took a photo that I was going to throw away and made it into something that looks pretty darn cool. You know, I love those clouds coming across the top there. My overall color temperature seems a little bit off, so I might just change that a little bit, but pretty cool. Same way with this photo. So this is, I thought I had the original here. Sorry, let me reset that, show you what that looked like to start with. So simply cropped it in because I didn't want those other, and I like doing shapes, so I'm not afraid to make it a unique shape that doesn't fit a traditional format. So let's bring it up on the bottom a little bit. Do my blacks, do my clarity. See what dehaze does to this. It's going to add some nice contrast. Punch my vibrance, punch my saturation, bring the highlights down. Now I have this bright spot over here that I don't like, so I'm going to get a graduated filter. I'm going to get a graduated filter, he said. There we go. Bring it across from the corner, kind of sideways. And now if I just lower my exposure, I'm just going to darken that corner down a little bit, get rid of that, get rid of those highlights.
So with the graduated filter, it all begins with the dot and what direction you bring your cursor?
Exactly. So as I bring that across the photo, so there's my cursor. So whichever way I click and drag is the way the filter will work. So if I click from the left and drag to the right, anything that I do happens on the left side of it. And I can rotate it too. You can, once you drag it, you can move it all around. And you can drag on the point and move the center point, and you can drag on the lines to change the amount that it's how gradual it is.
Okay, so what determines what direction the graduation is?
From the way you start dragging. So when you first, so if I'm gonna move, if I want to make like this corner darker, so I would start here in this lower corner, click, hold down on the mouse, and drag towards that way, and that's going to affect it. And then I can move it wherever I want. So my exposure to show you what I'm doing.
Oh, great. Okay,
like that.
All right. And so when you select the mask overlay,
so that shows you where the mask is. So when I click on this one, it'll show you in red where the mask is. And you have to turn that off to make your changes, or you won't be able to see your changes as you're making them. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there is a keyboard shortcut for that. You just tap the O key, and that's, you know, there's a whole bunch of, I have a list of, I don't know, 150 keyboard shortcuts, which I can remember 7. but O is one that I use an awful lot, just to turn on and turn off that mask, so I can see the mask and turn it on and turn it off instead of having to move the mouse over here and click on that. But okay. So a couple more things here. So if you have a series of photos and you shot them all the same and you want to make an adjustment to one and have them all do the same, you can do that. So let's do something crazy with this one and make it look really weird. That way we can see the difference. Oops, I'm on a mask. Let's go on a mask, sorry. So let's change our temperature way down to there. Let's make it look like that. So you can see in the film strip on the bottom, the other 7 are different. So I now have the first one selected. I hold down my shift, click on the last one, and selects them all. And I come over here on the right to sync, and it will give me a choice of what do you want to synchronize. And I want to do everything, so I have everything checked. And then when I click synchronize, you'll see each one of those photos changes. So if you are shooting something and like a wedding, and you have a situation where all the pictures were a little dark, you can just fix one of them and then tell to fix all the others just like that. And it's a great thing.
So Loren,
Yes.
so the first one in the selection, that's the pattern that will that the rest of it will follow.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
So you change the first one, and then you click Control.
So then you select all the other ones. You can either do it by holding down the Shift key and clicking on the last one, or do the Control or Command key and individually. So they don't have to be in a sequence. So if you just wanted to change those 3, you could do that.
Okay.
Or I'll give you one more or. let's change this one. So if you then have a picture right beside it and you want to change it to look just like that one, if you click over here on the previous button, it will change whatever photo you were last on. So if I click previous, it's now doing that one. If I come over and click on this one, hit previous, it will change that one.
Wow.
So I'm going to undo both of those because I want to show you something else here. Come on, get dark. Okay. So you might notice that these photos.
Where was the undo button that you were clicking?
Command Z or Control Z on Windows. So you have a whole lot of, just like it's undo, just like on Microsoft Word or anything else.
But on a MacBook?
On anything. Yeah, on Mac, it's Command Z.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So these are photos I shot of a mountain range in British Columbia. And I wanted to make a panorama out of them. And so I shot them vertical so I could get a huge file. And then I'm going to use Lightroom to put them together. So if I select them all, I go up under Photo, Photo Merge Panorama, and it is going to stitch them all together for me. Now, these are big files, so actually I'm going to cheat and show you the final output in another folder. You'll have to believe me that it really did it this way. I guess you don't have to, but that's the final picture out of all those other pictures stuck together. You can see I had it toned a little different, but it's a great way to do panoramas. And if you are into HDRs, do I have an HDR in here? So you might have heard of HDR pictures. So HDR, I went black and white. What happened there? HDR stands for high dynamic range. So if you're taking a picture in a room like this and you want to have detail in the windows and detail on the floors, you can't do that in one shot, because any of your exposures are going to, if you're exposing for the windows to get detail, your floor is going to be way too dark. If you expose for the floor, your windows are way too bright. So you can select, if you shoot, and it really helps to do it on a tripod so you don't move, multiple pictures with different exposures. So I shot one like that, one like that, one a little darker, a little darker. I moved, but I really didn't. I don't know why these, I must have cropped them in another demo. That's the final picture. So you can see now I have detail in the sky, or in the windows, and detail on the floor. And the way I did that was pretty similar as the panorama. I click on one, or just select the 5 photos that I want, go up under photo, photo merge, HDR. And it will put those photos together and select the right tonal values out of each one to give you a good exposure overall. That will save your butt an awful lot. But you have to remember to shoot your pictures that way when you're out shooting. There are other programs out there that do a little better job than Lightroom on the HDR stuff, but you know, for most things it does a really nice job. So I use it as my first one, and then if something else needs to be done, I will do that. So we have our photo we like. What do we do with it? So remember, it's the original has not been touched, so it's still sitting there in whatever folder your original file is, and you're looking at a preview. So you need to get it back out of Lightroom if you want to do something with it, like put it on the web, or print it, or send it to a printer, or send it to a friend, or whatever. So you have to export it. And again, exporting is really a misnomer, but if you click on export, it gives you an option of lots of different things you can do, where you want to put it, if you want to rename it, what kind of file you want. So if you're going to put it on the web, you probably want it to be a JPEG. It could be a Photoshop file, a TIFF, a DNG, or whatever the original was. You can change the quality. You can resize it. So if you're putting a photo on the web, you don't want to do a full-size photo. If you're writing a blog, you should know what size your blog, the biggest your blog will take. Mine is 910 pixels. So I would make it 910 pixels wide, because no reason to have a picture bigger than that. If you want to add some sharpening, you can do it there. And then you export it, and then it goes someplace. So again, one of the beautiful things of Lightroom is presets. And so if you're going to export a photo, multiple photos the same way, especially over time, you can create a preset of whatever your selections are. So you can see here on the left, I have several presets of the way I export my photos. So blog 910 selects the quality I want, puts the photo in my blog photos folder, renames it however I wanted to name it, and then all I need to do is hit export, and it goes that size. If I want to make a big canvas print, that one does that. Slideshows, I make the pictures 1920 pixels wide, and so I have a different one for that. So I have a lot of different presets, and that way I can just pull up the photo, choose my preset, and export. But even more better, as I like to say, is I can select a photo, either the grid or in full view, right click on it, and come down to export, and there's my whole list of presets. So I can just go boom, blog 910, and that photo goes to my blog folder.
Loren,
yes.
how do you create preset?
How do you create presets? In the export over here, you click. So you set it up the way you want it. Then you click on add, and it will ask you for a name. Test, and then that will show up here. So you can see Lightroom test is there with whatever selections you wanted.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just a couple more things here. as my Lightrooms don't freeze up on me. Thank you. Down on the bottom is a thing on while you're in the library module called Publish Services. And most online services have a way for Lightroom to send photos directly to them. So if you're on Facebook, you can have it automatically send a picture to Facebook. If you're on Instagram, you have a plugin from Instagram that you use. So you can see here the 290 photos that I've uploaded directly out of Lightroom to my Instagram feed. And so all you have to do is add a photo drag a photo to this and then hit publish, and it goes right to Instagram. Same way with Facebook. If you use Flickr, if you have most big photo labs have a publish service that you can just send to. If you want to use Adobe Stock, you can set up that and send it right to. So publish services are really a powerful way. And to create a new one, you just click here and you go to the publishing manager and you go find the one that you want to use. I think Facebook and Flickr and the Lightroom does not come as a standard one. You have to go get that one. But they have quite a few that are in the default. You just have to set up your login on the Facebook and it will upload right to it. Pretty cool. That is the quick overview of Lightroom. There's obviously a lot more detail that I go into in my workshops, but hopefully that'll give you a feel for what Lightroom does. And you know, there are lots of tutorials on the web. Adobe has very good ones. And their people have done, they've got a couple people who do just really good overviews of Lightroom and Photoshop, videos that are not complex, but they cover, you know, they get into it. So I highly recommend going to Adobe's website to get more tutorials, and they're free. But I do have an advanced Lightroom class coming up next month, and in July, the beginner Lightroom class called Getting the Most Out of Lightroom, which we go over in much more detail what we talked about tonight and more things. But any questions at this point? Man, I'm good.
Well, the question I had to do with exporting and the sizing. I'm not exactly, if you can go back to that page, I can.
So when you're exporting, you need to tell it, you can have it resize it or not. So if you're going to send a photo to a lab to be printed, don't resize it. Send them the full size, the biggest you have. But if you're going to put it on a website, you can either tell it the exact width and height, or the long edge is what I usually do. So you want to tell it, you know, if the biggest it goes on the website is 1,000 pixels, make it 1,000 pixels, and the resolution for all computer monitors is 72. So you want to do 1,000 pixels at 72 pixels per inch.
Okay, so and if I'm going to have it printed, don't resize it. Just let it go through the way it is.
Exactly. Uncheck the resize, and that way it creates the biggest file possible, which is what you always want when you're having somebody else print it.
And the resolution.
It won't change the resolution. It'll be the biggest possible.
Okay, so as far as the resolution, I'm not sure. Does it make a difference what I set the resolution as when I'm printing? Or?
When you're sending it to be printed,
Yes.
No, you don't change. You don't change the resolution. And what image sizing really is doing is changing the resolution. They will, when they print it, they will downsize it to whatever they need it to be.
Okay, so I don't have to do any pixels per inch or anything like that.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. Don't worry about the sizing. You want to send them the full thing.
Okay. All right then. Okay, thank you. Because I sent I sent a photo to Nations Photos, and they said it should have been a better resolution. So
Right.
that had to do with the way I took the picture.
Well, it could be. When you're in your camera, you always want to have your settings for your file size to be the biggest file size possible. So it's possible you didn't have that the biggest file, and it's also possible you resized it at some point along the way. If you crop it, you're losing resolution too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions at this point?
No, this has been great. I appreciate it very
Great,
much.
thank you. Anybody else?
Just want to say thank you, Lauren. You've done a great job of giving us a good taste. I was toying with getting this, and now I can't wait to get it.
Yeah, it is. You know, Photoshop. You know, the difference between Lightroom and Photoshop is Lightroom. I can teach a class in one day, and you'll get 90% of what you need to know. Photoshop, I won't even attempt it. I won't even attempt. I don't even do Photoshop classes because it is so complex that I don't know everything. I've met one person who does, and she works for Adobe, and there's no way you can know everything there is to know in Photoshop. And you know, no matter what I tried to teach people, somebody would ask me something I didn't know. But it is just extremely complex, and Lightroom, like I say, does almost everything Photoshop does, but it's logical and it's mostly just moving sliders around and seeing what you like. So.
Cool.
What's your website, please?
My website is lorenphotos.com, LORENPHOTOS.com.
Loren,
Yes.
when I'm editing, I find that my hands hurt from moving the sliders and whatever. Would you suggest a different type of keyboard or something that will make it better? That will
No,
make it easier?
most of it's done with your mouse. You know, you're you know, in develop module, you're just sliding things back and forth all the way down through there.
Yeah, but I find it that after doing it for a long time, my hand hurts.
Well,
So
some people prefer a tablet with a pen. Some people have the you know, different kind of mouse, the big roller mouse. Yeah, I mean that's an ergonomics thing. Are you sitting up straight, Shirley? With your arm, with your elbow at a 90-degree angle?
Maybe that's it.
Anybody, anything else?
But thank you. This is really good.
Okay, I will post this on YouTube and put the link on my website. So, and on the meetups. So, if you want to watch it again.
Is there an expiration date?
No, it'll be there forever until YouTube throws me out.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing else. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren.